I spent 5 months in Latin America this year, and by the end of it, I have to say, I was pretty happy to leave. Today, I'm going to tell you why. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the author of this book, available on Amazon, and the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs legally go where you are treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. Part of going where you're treated best, in my mind, is choosing from the best the world has to offer. We have a great buffet. Never has happened in the last, hundreds of years at least, where there are so many different opportunities that you can take advantage of. That's what I'm going to talk to you about today and share with you my recent experience of spending about 5 months in Latin America from the beginning of this year until the end of May. So first couple days in January was wrapping up some time in Eastern Europe, basically. Had spent part of the winter there and was ready to move on for a little bit better weather, greenery of Bogota, Colombia. And if you've been watching our channel, you've seen that I have spent a little over a year renovating a home in Bogota. There were some delays due to the pandemic. Great contractor, very detailed, and so he did a great job on that. And so we landed in Bogota early January, January 6th, I think. Bags full of stuff that I wanted to leave in Bogota, the new, pad in Bogota. Just it's the best feeling on earth these days. You pack everything and then you just leave it there and it's like it disappears like magic. And was so excited to go there because it really is a great place. There's a great energy in Bogota. And spent close to 3 months in Bogota, did a little bit of travel around Colombia, enjoyed all of our favorite restaurants, met some friends, made some new friends, and had a great time. April comes, and I go to Mexico to get ready for Nomad Capitalist Live. We had a sold-out live event. It was coming up in Playa del Carmen in May, so I wanted to be there well ahead of time. Mexico's a great place in Latin America to do some shopping, get your wardrobe built up for the conference and for the next stops. And so spent almost 2 months, about 7 weeks in Mexico, Mexico City, Mérida, Playa del Carmen, and ended up very briefly in Tulum. And by the time it was over, came back to Mexico City, one of my favorite cities in the world. And by the time the flight came, felt, I've really had enough. I'm ready to move on. Now, why? Because, Colombians, some of the nicest people that you're going to meet, Malaysians, Colombians, always have a great time and always really, really nice, kind people. Mexicans, very nice people as well. Mexico City is certainly a bit more of the New York of Mexico, right? So you've got a bit more brusque behavior, which is fine. Things get done. Really enjoy it. But here's what I can tell you. As someone who is nomadic, it's hard for me to keep any language, super fluent. So, I speak some Spanish. It ebbs and flows. And when I hadn't spent that much time previous to this trip in Latin America for a little bit over a year. And so, not only does my accent and some of my pronunciations, depending on the country, are they less understood? In Colombia in particular, they understand some of my pronunciations a little bit less. It was a little bit tough. And so you're constantly speaking in Spanish, which helps you build the language back up, and that's great. Eventually, if it's not a totally native or bilingual language situation, it can get a little bit frustrating. And so Mexico is better for that than Colombia. Now, if you want to go down and live in Mexico, live in Colombia, obviously you want to learn Spanish. If you're going to be nomadic, it's going to be a little bit harder. So that's an issue where it was enjoyable for what it was. I really, had a great time, dealing with everybody there. Obviously, again, have some friends where we will speak in English. But, that became a bit of an issue. Really, I think what happened is I just realized after 5 months, it was time to move on to somewhere else. It wasn't that, the language was a big issue. It wasn't that I don't like Colombia or I don't like Mexico. It's simply a matter of, from my perspective, the world has so much to offer. Every place has pros and cons. And if you can, time those pros and cons in an appropriate way, you can create, whether it's a trifecta lifestyle or what we call the modified trifecta lifestyle, you can basically divide your time to where you get the best out of that place. And then, you don't deal with as much of the frustrations. As someone who is an expat, if you want to call it that, or a nomad, you are not necessarily from that place. Now, in Mexico or Colombia, if you're going to stay there, learn the language, live there full time, buy your house, integrate in the community, that's going to be a lot easier than integrating into Bosnia, for example, or trying to convince people you're Montenegrin, right? I mean, the new world, Latin America in particular, it's going to be easier for you to be accepted. In fact, one of the speakers at Nomad Capitalist Live is a woman who is from Utah, but lived in Mexico for a number of years. Her neighbors literally thought she was Mexican, and they accepted her, even though she doesn't really look what you would think as a Mexican. They accepted her because, hey, we all have different looks and shapes and sizes and what have you. And so that's doable. But if you're going to be moving around, if you're going to be taking advantage of that buffet, that's going to be a bit more difficult. And I think there's going to be a time when there's a certain, not a frustration even, but just, all right, it's time to move on. Part of that for me is I think that for many years at the beginning of my nomad journey, I spent time in Europe and Asia. I was fascinated by Asia. I see a lot of opportunities in Asia. Asia has things where you do have a lot more opportunity. Things are in many cases more fast-paced. People are more go, go, go. Not all of them. But a lot of the Asian societies are run by people who are go, go, go. Things get done. Make money law is the phrase in some countries. And what Asia also has is it has a great luxury culture, and it very much caters to people who are successful. So if you go to Dubai, or if you go to even Istanbul, but Dubai or Qatar or Singapore, or many of these nice airports, it's indicative of the culture where you have these great luxuries. You have great luxury hotels in Asia, etc. You go to Latin America, it's not as much of a luxury culture. It's much more, perhaps rustic, to use a better word. I mean, if even some of the nicest hotels, it's more simple, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at a certain point, to me, it's like I want to go back to, the cultures that are more in line with what I'm looking for, which is, it could be as simple as, hey, we've got the priority line at the airport. In much of Latin American culture, you don't have some of those things. And that's maybe a very small example. But, where is life easier? Life is very pleasant. Life is very enjoyable in Latin America. Joshua Sheets, who was on a panel at our conference, he hosts a podcast and has lived with his family in all over Latin America, Costa Rica, Mexico, Colombia, etc., says, hey, our family's thinking of moving beyond Latin America because, at a certain point, it's very enjoyable, but it's not as much, it's not pushing you forward. And so I think that even though Mexico is one of the closest places, in my opinion, to American culture, they have many of the American brands, the American restaurants, the American vibe, the American service aspect, tipping culture, all those things are very similar. American and Mexican culture in particular, very similar. And so as someone who comes from the U.S., it's nice to go and get that taste of home and eat some of the foods that I like. And, literally, even going into a 7-Eleven and getting certain things that you might have remembered, getting a Circle K, as someone who lived in the U.S. Southwest, it just feels like, oh, there's a little nostalgia there. That eventually wears off. And so I think what's important to do if you are going to create your lifestyle where you're going to be in different places is figure out, okay, what am I trying to get from each place? What is each place good at? What is each place bad at? Mexico City, for example, dreadful airport, not difficult to get to, but just a pain to fly in and out of. So dealing with bureaucracy, dealing with things like the airport in Mexico, not enjoyable whatsoever. In fact, whenever I go to the airport and everyone's nice and everything works, I'm pleasantly surprised. Which everyone in Mexico is generally always nice, and so that airport or again bureaucracy or those kind of things, those stick out. It's not designed for wealthy people per se. There are certainly very wealthy communities in Mexico, but if you want those trappings of, hey, come over here, you're not going to get that as much in Latin America. So again, figure out what is it you think you can get from each place. I think what Joshua and I agree on is Latin America, great place to spend some time. Probably, even though you could put down roots and be very well accepted, for us as entrepreneurs, people who are trying to grow, people who are trying to develop, you look at Asia, you look at places like Dubai, you look at places like Singapore, people are building great things. Obviously, people in Mexico are building great things, and I had the pleasure to meet some very successful people in different industries when I was in Mexico and in Colombia as well, some very successful entrepreneurs. but there's much more a culture of laid back, take things as they go. And it's not entirely how I feel. So it's nice to go and say, all right, what's my time limit for that? I enjoyed Colombia. There's not as many consumer conveniences there. So after 2 or 3 months, I said to myself, I've loved it for what it is. And I always enjoyed doing an interior design project and finishing the art and finishing the small touches and working with people to do that. It was a lot of fun. And then it's like, all right, well, now it's time to go do business in Mexico. And after a while, it's like, okay, Mexico, got it. Onward to the next. I think defining yourself in who you are, if you're a go entrepreneur, you probably want to limit your time in Latin America to a certain part of the year, like a trifecta. It's 1/3 of the trifecta. If you're a more laid-back entrepreneur running a lifestyle business, maybe it has a bigger role. And if you're retired, maybe it has an even bigger role. But analyze, what each place can do for you. I go to Asia, and eventually, there's things in Asia that eventually bother me as well. This is why I created the trifecta. Was if you're not from any of these places, it may not be something that you want to deal with. Because you know what I had to tell Mrs. H? She goes out and makes friends with expats everywhere we go. Expats whine and complain. We all have certain frustrations in life. I would like to not be a guy who whines and complains. I would like to enjoy things for what they are, see the best in things. But I think that, you look at people who spend 5 years in one place as expats. There's more of a frustration sometimes because I feel like they get frustrated that they can't control the situation. They're not going to change the local culture, and they're not. You shouldn't try to. You should accept it for what it is, and you should also accept how much of this can I take at once. And so if you're just going to places that are totally new for you, the trifecta, I think it's a perfect timeline. 4 months in a region, so that could be Colombia and Mexico and Latin America, or Ecuador and Brazil, or whatever it is. And then you go on to the next place. Then you go on to Europe. Maybe you split your time up in different places. Okay, I've had enough of Europe. So those are the questions that I'd be asking myself. That's why I was happy to leave Latin America. Do I plan on going back to Latin America? Yeah, of course, and I'll be very happy to go back after having recharged, gotten some of the other things that other parts of the world have to offer. I can go back and enjoy that for what it is. So people ask, Andrew, how do I get the most out of Nomad Capitalist? How do I begin my Nomad Capitalist journey? The first thing people do is they start right where you're at. They watch YouTube, they listen to podcasts, they read articles at nomadcapitalist.com. We've spent years creating thousands of pieces of free content so that you can get the vibe from someone who's actually done this, from someone who's actually been in your shoes. What they'll do next, they'll get a copy of the book. You can find it on Amazon. It costs a few bucks, and while it's not going to give you all the secrets, it's going to, again, give you more of the vibe. You're going to learn a lot of the things that I've learned. You're going to learn some strategies you can employ, and you're going to get a lot further in your journey. From there, if you are the 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur investor, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can click Become a Client. We're pretty busy these days, but we have availability to help a limited number of people who want to create a holistic plan, something that I think is so important. So if you want to do that, go to nomadcapitalist.com, click Become a Client, learn more about how it works and how we can help you.